I mentioned at the outset that Jesus is going to speak to us about the difference between fair and just. I love this. This is one of my favorite passages. It's one that I've struggled with a long time in my life. Fair and just are two different things. Fair has to do with how I perceive what I deserve. That's what fair has to do with. Fair is my perspective on what I think I deserve. And this is really common for us when we're growing up. When we're children, we experience this a lot. It happens when maybe mom's making dinner or chopping up brownies for us, and she gives everybody a brownie, right, moms? And I look at my brownie, or your kids look at their brownies, and they look at the other ones and say, wait a minute, theirs is bigger than mine. That's not fair. Right? We're very good at that. That's not fair. Fair is my perspective of what I think I deserve, and I compare myself to others. So fair is a very subjective way of looking at things. Just, though, is very different from that. God is just. God is not fair. God is not fair. Just letting you know that. God's not fair. God is just. Just has to do with something that's objective. God gives all what they deserve and what is due them. And that might be different from what I think I deserve. God is just, and he gives all what is their due and what we deserve. And this parable highlights that wonderfully well. Have any of you struggled with this passage of all of the workers getting the same pay at the end of the day? Has it ever been tough for you to sort of grasp and hold on to that? That's not fair. And you're right, it's not fair. It's not fair. But I like to share this example. If you've heard it, I apologize, but just help us understand this difference between fair and just. And it's an experience I had with day laborers when I was going to school in California. Some of you might have had this experience, which is still common, but was very common in the time of Jesus, where people will go out on a street corner and hope for employers to come by and hire them for the day or for the week or whatever it might be. Have you seen that before? Where they all sort of gather on a specific corner, and in the morning, there's a whole group standing there. We had a retreat day in the seminary where we were meant to just kind of go out and just observe life, and that's where I went, and I spent the day observing this. And so there's all of these folks standing on the street corner, and a construction guy would come by, and out of this crowd, it's a pretty diverse crowd. There's real young, buff guys that could be wide receivers, 18-year-olds, all the way up to guys in their 50s and maybe even early 60s. So when that construction van or truck pulls up, who do you think that construction employer is going to choose? The wide receiver or the guy with gray hair and a bum shoulder and a limp? Pretty obvious, huh? The 18-year-old's going to get picked most likely, and he's going to go off to work. And so it's going to go throughout the day. And so it goes. And the ones left standing there are the ones not chosen. You ever been picked last for the team? It's kind of nice, huh? Do you like getting picked last? And these men who were standing there probably had several children at home. The 18-year-old didn't have any children at home. I'm not saying he doesn't need a job. But here's this man who has serious financial responsibilities who's not getting hired. And there he is waiting all day. And the truck's just passing by. And he's still standing, still waiting, still waiting. I think if I could paraphrase this parable with Jesus, you would have that same scene. And then Jesus pulling up at the 5 o'clock hour of the day. And there's the older gentleman with the bum shoulder and the bad knee from working on his whole life with the 4 kids at home. And Jesus pulls up and says, has no one hired you yet? No one, sir. You can come and work with me. Come to my vineyard. And he brings that man to his vineyard. And then when it comes time to pay, that man receives an entire day's wage. And the 18-year-old begins to grumble. And Jesus says, I gave you all what was just, what you deserve, what you need. Do you think that's okay? I do. That's how God is. In my eyes, it's not fair. But the world, to that older gentleman, dealt him a tough hand in life. In the time of Jesus, there was no retirement benefits or anything like that. Life can be tough and can be challenging. And so what Jesus is saying is that God is so generous, but he's just. I just want to offer that to you, and for you just to take that and think about that. It's so easy to get caught in this. It's not fair, and it's not fair, and it's not fair. Fair has to do what I think I deserve. And God doesn't look at it that way. God's ways aren't our ways. God's ways are different than our ways. And that can be hard for us to wrap our minds around sometimes, particularly as we hear in the Psalms that we heard today of how kind and generous and merciful God is. How kind and generous and merciful God is. But I want to just ask you all to pray about something and discern something with me. In this parable that we heard, we can see that man, at the end of the day, life was hard for guys like him in those days. The world dealt them a tough hand. I think in our day, the world deals a tough hand to our youth, to our children, to our young families. I think it's very hard to be young nowadays. The hands that our youth are being dealt in this world are very challenging. It's very tough, and they face a lot of difficulties and challenges. So here's what I want you to pray about and discern with me. Try to imagine what it would look like if we were a parish that focused the vast majority of our resources and energy and efforts on our children and our youth. What if we were a parish that focused the vast majority of our time and energy and resources upon our youth and our children and our young families? Could you discern that with me? And just pray about that? What would that look like? What would that be like? So that's what my homework for you all, and what that might mean as a parish if we did something like that, of what that would look like. It might not be fair that we focus so much on these little ones, but it might be the just and the thing God would want us to do. Can you pray about that with me and just discern that? What it would look like for us as a parish to really, really focus on our youth and our children and our young families. So I think life's tough right now in our culture for that age group. And God is so good, and he is so merciful, and he wants us through this passage to begin to think how he would think, for us to be thinking the way God would think. So as Jesus walked into that situation, he knew what to look for. He knew where he needed to give the vast majority of his attention. And that's what I would like us to pray about. Again, as you go home today and someone has a bigger brownie than you, it's okay that it's not fair. Let's move away from fair and try to adopt more of God's way of just.